Henry's asking, are outlines critical before tackling a full script?
That's my forte. Yeah, I mean, I hate to be so frank about it, but absolutely yes. It's obvious when a writer is writing the script and making it up as they go. Not every outline is created equal, and the more you're writing scripts and the more experienced you become and more confident in your own approach to writing a screenplay, then maybe the outline isn't as essential because you've evolved, you know. But when you're working through the process of figuring out how to write a screenplay, don't try to figure it out in the pages. It just isn't going to work. You're going to get 30 to 40 pages in, spend 5 months doing it. 12 months later, you haven't written anything and you're like, oh God, I have to go back to that script. And you just start getting into this cycle of not believing in yourself. You can write an entire script in 12 pages through an outline. And you also learn how to rewrite in an outline. You can finish the outline and you can move things around. You can rewrite from a non-linear approach as opposed to just this scene happens, then this scene happens, and this scene happens. You really have to understand how logistical structure works versus emotional structure, which I believe there's a Connect webinar class that I did talking about the difference. It feels like you're wasting time because the fun part of writing a screenplay is the dialogue and the fun lines and the visuals and the scene headings and direction, and you know that's where it feels like you're living. But if you don't know what's going to happen 50, 60 pages from now, you're just making it up. And maybe you might get through that so-called vomit draft, but I hate that term and talk about one of my pet peeves. Why vomit a draft out? I get it that you just want to have the experience of writing something down. And a lot of writers say, well, I just kind of have to figure it out in the page. You don't really. And this is really one of the few things that I'm kind of very disciplined or a disciplinarian about. When I'm working with my writers one-on-one, we go through probably 6, 7, or 8 weeks of just working through the outline because you're able to cover all bases. Is this concept good enough? Should I even waste my time on this thing? How does the character work within that concept? How do I create the situation so I can see what's the repetitive and recurring moment in the second act that we're all going to hopefully be engaged by and entertained by in the middle? And then what's the logistical structure? You can beat it out. And then eventually you get into the pages, and it's so much easier and more fun to write those pages when you already know what's going to happen. It's not like you need to have every single line of dialogue in the outline. You just get the framework down with some specific moments. Then you get into the pages and you're still rewriting, right? You're still figuring things out. You're not just copying and pasting. So Henry, yes.
I used to be that guy who wrote, it's like I'd start page 1, I knew where I wanted it to go, and I'd start writing. I resisted the outline thing the longest time, and I wish I wouldn't have, because I've learned so much more about the characters I'm writing by doing an outline. Like there's things that I learn about my characters and really diving into that, and it makes it that much easier to write the dialogue because I understand, like I have them in, like it's like an inside outside going in thing with actors, you know. You have to put the words inside and try them 1,000 different ways. It's the same kind of thing when you're outlining. I feel like the characters, I might have an idea of the character and I have a, you know, like this broad idea, whatever, but it's the nuances of the character that come alive in the outlining process, and even journaling about those characters and making additional notes, having extra pages that I'm writing specifically about that and backstory and all that. So the more I write in a notebook with the outline and dive into the characters that much more, I understand that they couldn't go down that path, or they could go down this path, and that doesn't make sense, and this does, and you know, and then when they're intersecting, they wouldn't say that to each other. You know, it's just about getting it inside of you in a whole nother way.
Yeah, because the first version of the scene you write, or the scene idea, is probably not the best version of that scene. The first version of what you think the first act is going to look like, probably not the best version of that first act. So why spend all of that energy? Because we all know as writers, we're going to go through a scene, and then you're in that scene and you're like, oh, what's the best line of dialogue here? You don't even know what's going to happen in the second act. Why are we caring so much about this line of dialogue?
For me, I'm going to go the other way, because I I don't like outlines in the way that an outline is. When I think of an outline, is it sucks the life out of it for me. So I think it depends. Like, I think it's a combination of what Max and Craig are saying. I think you need to find out who your characters are inside and out, and know and be able to track what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I sometimes when people use outlines, they're writing to a plot point and you're not letting your character take you to that place you need to go. So for me, it's like a combination. We write the first act completely without outline because we just are trying to figure out our character, but we stop at that first act because that's the old world. So before we get into the new world of the new stuff that's happening, then it's like, then I feel more comfortable outlining because I know the character and I've worked on who the character is and why they're doing what they're doing and where they're at now before they make this big leap into the unknown. So I think it's a combination. I think it's, if you work really well in structure of outlining, do it. But if that kind of blocks you from creativity, then do a combination, do what, you know.
I think the difference, Shayna, is that you have an intention with that writing of the pages. You know why you're writing it. You're not just going to plow through.
Sure.
You're writing it to have fun and play with these characters and see where they are.
And I don't do a vomit draft.
And
I'll
it's
go
with the
back and
purpose,
rewrite until I get it right to keep going.
right. And it's with the purpose of looking at the second act, meaning I know that how this character is going to respond and react when they're in the situation we put them in, even though I don't know what that situation is.
Right.
Yeah.
I write with a guy who we talk through characters. We've talked through the whole story. And even as we're dissecting it further and further and further, but he has to go in and just write scenes, just write some scenes that are explorations of the character and just to get them out, because his creativity is, we have some ideas of this character. We kind of know where the character's going. We know where the end journey is, but to explore a moment in time with that character helps him take it. So for every person, there's a different way to do it. There's no one way. You have to find the rhythm in you that works. But I have learned that lesson where spending some time before sitting down and writing for me definitely makes a difference in understanding. So I don't feel like, I think somebody just wrote here that I'm on page 39 and totally stuck. I have been there 1,000 times and 39 and I'm like, oh, I went down this rabbit hole and now there's no way out. And you feel like, well, I can't cut it all because I went down that rabbit hole and my creativity got me there, but then it got you to end like a dead end. So throw it all away. And
that's
start
the
over.
other part of it. You become married to the material that you've written on the page. So I love the idea of stopping and go, oh, this is a really fun idea for a scene. Let's write the scene because it is fun and you can get some creative energy going. You get brainstorm in terms of how the character might react, but stop at writing that scene and go back and try to figure out, you know, how's this going to lay out? Because that's ultimately why we're getting stuck at page 39, because you're technically in your second act by then, but you don't really know what the second act is because you haven't done enough conceptual and character work.
Yeah.
You know? And he can write those scenes and then I read them and I can tell him like the way that we've talked about this character, that's not what I feel. That character would never do this. And then, or like, that's great. That's exactly where the character is going. And so those are just planting other parts of the scenes or painting part of the house in some way. Any analogy works.
Yeah, I think as Kimberly was saying, how to get through writer's block. And I think all of this that's being spoken about now are tools to do that. I think the idea of writing a scene about someone, maybe just like real kind of go on a deep dive on your favorite character, so that you kind of really, who are we following? Why are we following? Why do we care? You know, favorite color. I mean, like literally go to everything, do a whole, as if you writing them, standing them up from the ground up, as if you were 3D printing them. And then from there, maybe you can start to have an idea about then what you'd like to happen in the story. And then I think just really enjoy the process of maybe just going like, okay, I can give that a minute. And we were talking earlier about ideation and stuff, and really, okay, what else could I write instead then? So if that is not working for me, why don't I just think about writing 10 log lines out about stories that are really relevant right now, or there's a thing that's really bugging me at the back of my head that is drawing me away from this script, and just try and write some other ideas about, you know, If you took 5 people and you put them on the moon, then what, you know, and just kind of, just to get another bit of your brain opening up, so that
That's
then when
kinda-
you do come back.
there's an actor like process like that where a line is written in a comedy, and instead of making it funny, take a different emotion and apply that emotion to that line. So anger or hatred or jealousy or anything else, and just try it from a totally different angle, and you actually learn a lot about the character, and also find another nuance to how you can deliver that line in a funny way. Like and it also becomes, so it starts to go in, like I said, outside in. You're putting it inside your body, and you're finding these new nuances to how a character would react or interact and engage with people.
I
So
just think of these pretzels are making me thirsty.
that's right.
I think of right now.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we could talk about, I love pre-writing. But this is one of the fun things I get to do with my job, is I get to interview all of our top 25 writers, and I was going to provide a counterpoint. So I'm glad Shayna also is on board. Beth Hanna she very much just organically writes, and she writes mysteries, which those have to frequently have a lot of twists and turns and I would have thought insanely premeditated. Like my wall would have looked like an FBI with a string connecting things. But she really kind of discovers, I think she does a lot of, without writing it down, I think she really mentally plans a lot, but then she just goes for it. I'm on the other side, along with Max and Craig, where not only do I do an intensive outline, but then I find a handful of other movies that in my mind are better versions, like great things that share some commonalities with the story I want to tell. And then I outline those movies too, just to kind of like get the feel for where's the story at, how is the character, how did that work so well? So yeah, I over outline. I wanted to mention though, I think character creation, I'm glad you brought that up, Shayna, is intensely important. And I spend a lot of time on that. And Wes Anderson likes to do a fun experiment. No, it was Paul Thomas Anderson does a fun experiment where he finds his main characters and like really develops them, and then writes a scene he doesn't plan on using, where he just has them all sitting at a table having coffee together. And I think that's a kind of a fun exercise to try.
Yeah.
I think the word outline sometimes scares people away, because it sounds like something that you're supposed to in, high school history class, and it's Roman numeral 1, and you give it a title. Like it doesn't have to be, doesn't have to look like that. Outline can be anything. Like what Beth does, I can only assume, is that she's outlining it in her head. I honestly don't know how you can write something without knowing what might occur later. Like that, to me, it's a foreign concept. But that also comes from a place of Beth is very experienced. She's been writing for a long time. She's not new with this, and she's already pretty gifted and talented. So that's what I meant, that everybody's at a different place. Anyway, I could go on and on about.
She's also a novelist. She was a novelist first, so she was already used to kind of writing out very big stories in her head and big worlds, creating big worlds. So I think that's the thing. She has and so then and then she read loads of screenplays, and then the two have combined to make this magic that is now Beth Hanna, the top 25 screenwriters to watch at the ISA.